You know that feeling when you're looking at the world, the news, social media, everything, and it feels less like reality and more like a movie? Like you're just watching a show. Well, the French philosopher Jean Baudrillard had a name for that. In fact, he built his entire philosophy around diagnosing that feeling. So let's dive into his work and his absolutely mind-bending vision of our modern world.
Okay, so Baudrillard kicks things off with a pretty wild claim. He says our obsession with images isn't about some deep search for meaning. Nope, he thinks it's something way more basic, a brute fascination that just grabs us. And for him, that's exactly what makes them immoral. They don't ask us to think or to judge, they just ask us to look.
So to really get a handle on this, we need to follow his train of thought. We're going to start with what he calls the demon of images, then trace how they've changed through 4 key phases, and that's going to land us in this bizarre place called the hyperreal. From there, we'll look at a wild thought experiment about a simulated heist and see how it all leads to what he calls a societal panic for the real.
All right, first up, the demon of images. For Baudrillard, the images that flood our lives aren't just innocent pictures. He argues they're actually more like black holes, where meaning and reality itself just disappears. Here's the core of the idea. The world used to run on representation. A map pointed to a real place. A portrait represented a real person. The sign and the thing were connected. But Baudrillard says we've moved into an age of simulation. And simulation, it just shatters that connection. The signs don't point to reality anymore, they just point to each other. And he does not mince words here. He calls it a murderous capacity. This isn't reality just fading away, it's being actively killed by the image. I mean, think about it. How many times is our memory of a historical event completely replaced by the movie about it? The image murders the original and takes its spot.
So, how in the world did we get here? Baudrillard says this murder of the real didn't happen overnight. He lays out this 4-stage journey that traces how the image slowly broke away from reality and became something else entirely.
Okay, so here's the roadmap. Phase 1, the image is a good copy, like a realistic painting. It reflects reality. In Phase 2, it starts to distort reality, like a political cartoon that exaggerates things to make a point. Phase 3 is where things get really weird. The image now pretends a reality exists when it doesn't. Think of Disneyland's Main Street. It's masking the absence of a real town. And finally, in Phase 4, the image has totally disconnected. It has no relationship to any reality at all. It's a copy of a copy of a copy with no original. That's a pure simulacrum.
So, the crucial moment, the real jump down the rabbit hole, is that leap from Phase 2 to Phase 3. It's the difference between an image that's lying about the truth and an image that's lying to hide the fact that there is no truth behind it. It's hiding an absence. For Baudrillard, that's the moment our whole world changed.
So after we make that final leap, where do we end up? Well, we enter a brand new state of being, a strange territory that Baudrillard famously called the hyperreal.
Now, the hyperreal isn't fake. That's too simple. It's more like a high-definition, perfectly edited, remastered version of reality that feels more real than the messy, complicated original. You know, like a nature documentary that's so stunning it feels more epic and meaningful than actually being in the forest. That's the hyperreal. It's more real than real.
And Baudrillard saw this happening everywhere, especially in movies. He pointed to films like Barry Lyndon, which are so technically flawless, so perfectly recreated, that they stop feeling like a story about the past and start feeling like a perfect simulation of it. They're dazzling for sure, but in their perfection, they've lost that messy human element. They become more cinema than cinema, a simulation of the idea of a movie.
Okay, so this is all pretty abstract, right? But how does this weird hyperreal logic actually affect the real world of power and control? To figure that out, Baudrillard gives us this brilliant little thought experiment, the simulated heist.
He asked this question. Just imagine someone tries to stage a fake bank robbery. Fake guns, maybe signs that say this is a simulation. The whole deal. Which scenario do you think the system is more afraid of? The fake one or a real armed robbery?
And the answer is so clever. A real robbery is actually fine for the system. It confirms everything. There's crime, there are police, the rules work. But a simulated one, that's terrifying. Why? Because it suggests that maybe law and order, money, the whole system is just a simulation too. It doesn't just break the rules, it suggests the rules are just a game.
But here is the amazing twist. You can't actually do it.
The moment you try to stage a perfect simulation, the real world will come crashing in to stop you. A police officer will really shoot. Someone will really have a heart attack. The system cannot allow the line to be blurred, so it violently reabsorbs the simulation and forces it to have real consequences.
And this leads us to the final and honestly the most chilling part of his whole argument. What happens when simulation isn't just an experiment anymore, but it's the air we breathe? Well, the result is a kind of collective social panic. When the very ground of reality starts to feel like it's dissolving, the people in charge get desperate. And their only move, their last gamble, is to frantically start producing and injecting the real back into everything, just to convince us all that the old rules still matter.
And once you start looking, you see the signs of this panic everywhere. It's the obsession with authentic brands, real talk, and raw experiences. It's the way we desperately revive old symbols and myths long after their meaning is drained away. It's this almost hysterical overproduction of reality to cover up the fact that it's gone.
But here is the ultimate perfect irony. Baudrillard says it was the system of capital that started this whole process. It's what liquidated all the old traditions and certainties in the first place, creating this desert of the real. And now, that very same logic has come back to haunt the system itself.
So every attempt to fight back is completely doomed to fail. When power tries to generate a real crisis or a real enemy to get us all back on solid ground, it just ends up creating more media events, more signs, more spectacle. It just accelerates the very simulation it's trying to escape.
The inescapable conclusion here is that nothing is immune, not even power itself. In this strange new world, power gets disconnected from any real goal. It stops being about actual control and it becomes a performance of control. Just another simulation for us to consume.
And that leaves us with this final, incredibly unsettling question. Baudrillard wrote this stuff decades ago, but it feels like he was looking directly into our present. If our reality, our politics, our culture, and even the structures of power are all just different layers in a giant simulation, then what on earth is the game we're all playing?